The dream first took root not in a gleaming lab, but in the dusty silence of the Northwood High storage closet, room 114B. It was a space that smelled of forgotten projects, of dried-out marker ink and the faint metallic tang of old geometry sets. Javier Lopez was 17, and he knew this scent intimately. He would come here during lunch, the din of the cafeteria a distant murmur, and watch videos of the National Robotics Championship on his refurbished laptop. The whirring of precision motors, the elegant dance of aluminum and code, it was a symphony played in a world far from the leaking ceiling and flickering fluorescence of Northwood. His guidance counselor, Miss Flores, had sighed when he'd asked about a school team. "Javier, mijo, the budget for art supplies is a fantasy. A robotics team is a fairy tale." She'd said it not with malice, but with a weary resignation that was its own kind of lull. But a dream, once it has found a crack of light, is a stubborn thing. He started with a flyer, a single sheet of paper taped to the bulletin board next to the gym. Robotics, maybe, room 114B, after school. He didn't expect a response. For 3 days, the flyer grew brittle, its corners curling in the drafty hallway. Then, on a Thursday, the door to 114B creaked open. A girl named Chloe stood there, her fingers stained with newsprint from the school paper. "I can't code," she said, her voice direct, "but I can write, and I see things other people miss." Behind her was Leo, a sophomore who built elaborate Rube Goldberg machines out of cafeteria sporks and textbook rubber bands. He held a cardboard box filled with wires salvaged from broken headphones and a disemboweled DVD player. "I hear you're building something," he said, simply. This was the beginning. Their kingdom was a rickety table scarred with the initials of students long graduated. Their treasury was a collection of scavenged parts, the motor from a broken desktop fan, the sensors from an automatic hand dryer Leo had liberated during a maintenance week, a collection of gears that had once powered a dozen discarded toys. Javier's laptop, its battery dying after 47 minutes, was perpetually tethered to a power strip. Lines of Python code glowing on its screen, learned from online forums populated by anonymous, helpful ghosts. They worked in the quiet hours after the final bell. The room was filled with the soft click of keyboards, the scent of solder and hot plastic, and the focused silence of shared purpose. Javier, usually so quiet in class, became a different person here. His instructions were soft-spoken, his patience endless. He'd spend an hour with Leo, tracing a faulty connection with the tip of a pencil, their heads bent close together. He learned that Chloe's observational skill was a form of code itself. She was the one who noticed their robot, which they'd nicknamed Scraps, veered right every time the morning sun hit the gym floor. A light sensor calibration issue they'd never have caught. The day they pooled their money for the entry fee was a ceremony. They laid the crumpled bills and heavy coins on the table. It was money from packed lunches foregone, from weekend chores. Javier printed the forms on the school's grainy printer, the words Northwood High Robotics, a declaration of war on the empty spot where their funding should have been. The regional qualifiers were held at a convention center that gleamed with corporate sponsorship. The air was cool, smelling of lemon-scented polish and new carpet. The other teams moved in swarms of matching polo shirts, their robots cradled in custom-built aluminum cases. Team Apex from Crestview Academy had 3 mentors and a machine that moved with a silent, oiled grace. Javier, Chloe, and Leo carried Scraps in a cardboard box lined with bubble wrap. As they set up their small station, a boy from Apex, his shirt impossibly bright, glanced over. "Hey, cool," he said, his tone flat. "Retro." His friends snickered, not loudly, but the sound carried in the sterile air. Javier's hands, which had been steady while soldering a wire thinner than a hair, now felt clumsy. He saw their creation for what it was, a collection of other people's trash held together by hope and duct tape. The confidence he'd built in the safety of 114B evaporated, leaving a cold hollow in his stomach. He focused on tightening a screw that was already tight, the metal cold and sharp against his fingertips. But then Leo, without a word, reached into his bag and pulled out their lucky charm, a little plastic bird from a Kinder egg, its wings chipped. He set it carefully beside Scraps. Chloe caught Javier's eye and gave a small, sharp nod, the same one she used when she'd found a critical bug in his code. It was enough. They didn't win their first match, but they didn't lose embarrassingly either. Scraps, jerky and determined, managed to score 2 points before being gently nudged out of the ring by a sleek hydraulic arm. In the second round, they faced a team that had a malfunction. Scraps, resilient and simple, completed its task. They advanced. Through the preliminary rounds, they became a whisper, the underdog, the team with the robot that shouldn't work, but did. They fought their way to the semi-finals. There, they faced Team Apex. It was a brutal, beautiful dance of engineering versus ingenuity. Scraps was outmaneuvered, outpowered. In the final seconds, a precise claw from the Apex bot plucked their central gear assembly loose. The clatter of it hitting the floor was the loudest sound Javier had ever heard. It was over. Back at their station, the three of them moved slowly, the adrenaline receding like a tide, leaving the heavy sand of defeat. Javier carefully picked up the dislodged gear assembly. The plastic was warm from the motors. He traced its teeth with his thumb, feeling every tiny ridge. He didn't speak. There were no words for this specific, quiet ache. The announcer's voice boomed later during the awards ceremony. They watched as Team Apex collected the first-place trophy, its polished surface reflecting the arena lights in blinding starbursts. Javier prepared to leave, the weight of the cardboard box in his arms feeling heavier than when they'd arrived. And finally, the announcer said, a special award, one that doesn't always go to the team on the top of the podium. Javier stopped. This is for a team that demonstrated that innovation isn't born from the best resources, but from the best minds. For creativity, resilience, and a pure, unadulterated passion for the craft. The Innovation in Adversity Award goes to Team Scraps from Northwood High. The silence that followed was brief, then swelled into warm, generous applause. It was Chloe who nudged Javier forward. He walked to the stage, his legs feeling detached from his body. A woman with a kind, tired face and a judge's lanyard handed him a small, clear trophy. Inside it, frozen in resin, were a gear, a circuit board, and a bolt, a museum piece of their struggle. "Your gear assembly," the woman said, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "The way you reverse-engineered that DVD player motor for torque, that was brilliant. I'm Dr. Evans. I run a foundation that funds STEM in underfunded schools. I'd like to talk to you and your principal." Javier looked down at the trophy in his hands. It wasn't heavy, but it held the weight of every late night, every salvaged part, every moment of doubt conquered. He looked out into the crowd and saw Miss Flores, who had driven them here in her own car. She wasn't resigned anymore. She was wiping her eyes, her smile wide and real. He walked back to Chloe and Leo. He didn't say, "We did it." He didn't have to. He simply held out the trophy, and Leo placed the little plastic bird on top of it. It was a complete circuit. They packed Scraps back into his box with a new, gentle reverence. The drive back to Northwood was quiet, but the silence was different now. It was full, pregnant with a future they had just built, not for themselves, but for all the quiet dreamers who would someday inherit room 114B.